so seething with anger, they overtook the steps of City Hall.
Eventually turned into a major disturbance with a lot of disorderly behavior.
Literally thousands of police. When you saw that crowd, it was absolutely breathtaking. And they were violent. And their main speaker was Rudy Giuliani. He got up and led them in the most provocative chants. When I saw Rudy be identified with January 6th, I said he did a dress rehearsal at the police riot against Dave Dinkins.
Rudy went down there and I went with him. And the idea was to show support for the cops. He didn't know he was going to attend a racist rally.
We were standing there looking out through the bars. Jimmy Breslin got roughed up. He was the columnist. Una Clark was a city councilman. Some people in this mob tried to block her from walking to City Hall, and they said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm a city councilwoman." And they said, "This says she's a city councilwoman."
Do you believe that N is a council member? So I just told them, I said, I'm a Jamaican and there are no N's where I come from.
They climbed the very steps of government and felt comfortable to call the mayor of the city a nigger. It's outrageous. If David Duke had a police department, it would look and sound like this group of people.
There was a real sense of mob rule, but on the inside, there was a sense of, let's just hold the building.
Shalom, Lord in Christ. I'm Priest Ashar Gapan of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Yohana. And under Commanding General Yohana, we have been teaching the truth according to the Bible. And that is that the so-called Negroes, so-called Hispanic Latinos, so-called Native Americans, indigenous to Americas, that we are the real children of God. When you read the nation of Israel in the Bible, that is talking about us. When you read the 12 tribes of Israel, that is talking about us. When you hear and read the Jews, that is talking about us. The children of God, that is talking about us. But here in 2024, we have strayed so far away as a people from the Lord that we refuse to even accept the idea that we are those people that are written in the book called the Bible. And we are. Today is the ISUPK history class for the nation. I'm Priest Ashar Gapan. Joining me is Priest Aishaya Allah. To all the brothers that are in the class and watching online, Shalom, Yahal Ba'ashim Yavashai Brokatham. To the sisters, Yahal Shamar Al Athan Ba'ashim Yavashai. And today, is this is the month of February, and February is notorious for, yes, Brother A, Black History Month. But we're going to do it in reverse. This whole class is about Black history, Hispanic history, Native history. So today, in honor of Black History Month, we're going to talk about white people. And we're going to talk about white crimes. Specifically, we're going to talk about the 1992 City Hall riots that happened here in New York City, down in City Hall by the Brooklyn Bridge. And we're going to reveal what 4,000 to 10,000 protesters, majority or a great amount of them, white NYPD off-duty and on-duty officers, and what they did down in City Hall, how they conducted themselves. And we're also going to talk about the first Black mayor of New York City, right? So before we get into the main article, I would like for you to share the Wikipedia article on the first Black mayor of New York City, Mayor Dinkins. If you could read that, Baba Shah.
David Norman Dinkins, July 10th, 1927 to November 23rd, 2020, was an American politician, lawyer, and author who served as the 106th mayor of New York City from 1990 to 1993.
So New York City had 105 mayors before Mayor Dinkins, right? And he became the first black mayor, the first black person to be mayor of New York City. Keep going.
Dinkins was among the more than 20,000 Montford Point Marines, the first African-American U.S. Marines from 1945 to 1946. He graduated cum laude from Howard University and received his law degree from Brooklyn Law School in 1956. A longtime member of Harlem's Carver Democratic Club, Dinkins began his electoral career by serving in the New York State Assembly in 1966, eventually advancing to Manhattan Borough President. He won the 1989 New York City mayoral election, becoming the first African-American to hold the office.
Now, clap it up for Mayor Dinkins for being the first African-American to be mayor of New York City. Good job, Mayor Dinkins. And the second mayor, second black mayor to follow, who is mayor now, is Mayor Eric Adams, who just by chance, who not by chance used to be a NYPD police officer, and who not by chance was actually part of or was there during the 1992 City Hall riots, right? So let's get into our history class today. If you can share the second tab or the third tab with actually the first, that should be the first or third. No, yeah, that one. That one, yes. Let's share that. Boom. Just look at this image here. Look at this image. I don't know about you, but I spent a good hour, looking at this image, trying to see black people. I couldn't. I saw one Asian looking person that's right on the left of the guy wearing the Phillies baseball hat, right? I see a woman all the way on the corner left. 3 people, one person down from the American flag.
I don't know. That kind of looks like a brother way there
by the tree.
Right over here behind the flag.
Behind the flag.
It's like, where's Waldo?
I don't know, but I think that could have been a brother right next to the tree. I'm not sure unless he's just in the shade. Right, so it's debatable, man. I was looking, I just see a sea full of white people and cops. I'm pretty sure there might be some Hispanic people there, some light-skinned brothers. I think that might be a black man by the tree, standing next to the tree, right?
Yeah, hey, there's one right there by the left, to the left of the phone booth.
To the left of the phone, wearing the hat?
Yeah. Look at 3. He found 3.
He looks so out of place. He really looks like a character in the film Get Out. He just looks stuck in a maze, right?
Yeah.
But this is an iconic picture that was taken back in 1992 during the City Hall riots, right? Now, look at this guy in the phone booth. Now, they're completely out of order. For you to be standing on the phone booth, that's disorderly conduct right off the bat, right? If any one of us were to do something like that, we would probably get arrested. But since these are cops, they're not going to be arresting themselves. Keep scrolling. Let's get into the article.
White riot.
What?
White riot.
So it's a what?
White riot.
So we know, regardless if we saw an Asian man and 2 people who look black in it, this is a what?
White riot.
So they made it. They made it a point. They bolded the letters. They made the letters bigger than every other letter to point out that this was a what?
White riot.
And for Black History Month, today's topic is white crimes. And we're going to go into a what?
White riot.
That happened when?
In 1992.
Keep going.
Thousands.
Start from the beginning.
In 1992.
No, the beginning.
White riot.
Keep going.
In 1992, Thousands of furious, drunken cops.
White riot, thousands of furious, drunken cops. So we know that this is a white riot where thousands of upset, angry, pissed off, furious cops who are white boy wasted, drunk. Keep going.
Descended on City Hall.
What they do?
Descended on City Hall.
Did they like walk casually?
Descended on City Hall.
Did they everyone in a uniform fashion
Descended.
on the sidewalks, pushed the sidewalk light signal, waited the 24 seconds, 30 seconds for the light to change?
They would never jaywalk.
No, they would never jaywalk. They would never cross the street without the right of way. What did they do?
Descended on City Hall.
What they did on January 6th when they stormed the Capitol. They descended on City Hall. Keep going.
And changed New York history.
Really? Say it again.
And changed New York history.
Did you learn about this in school? What does it say?
And changed New York history.
What did you learn about this in school?
No.
Read what it said again.
And changed New York history.
It changed New York history so much that we never learned about this in New York City history. That's how much it changed New York history. That they did not want us to know that 3 years after I was born, 3 years after the first black mayor was elected to be mayor of New York City, a white riot stormed City Hall, and it was caused by white cops who were drunk and mad. But we've never been taught this throughout any history class from preschool all the way to the 12th grade. You might not have even heard about this even in college. But this happened in 1992 here in New York City. Keep in mind, this was only 9 years before September 11th. Keep going. But we know about September 11th.
Right.
We know about September 11th and the heroes of the NYPD, but we don't know about these officers of the NYPD. We don't know about the thousands of white drunken cops that took part in this riot. Keep going.
At around 11 a.m. on September 16th, 1992, Norm Steitzel heard a roar from outside his office in City Hall.
So imagine you're just at work. Wait. September 16th, just 5 days before September 11th, 9 years earlier. Imagine being in your office, beautiful fall, summer. You're looking out your office and you hear a roar coming from outside your window. And what did he do?
Peering out the window.
And he goes to his window like, what the heck is this commotion? I don't remember approving a march or parade. He peers out his window. Keep going.
He saw thousands of off-duty police officers.
What?
He saw thousands of off-duty police officers.
He looks out his window and sees not one, not a few, not several, not a couple dozen, not even a couple hundred. He sees thousands of police officers who are off duty, all outside his window. Keep going.
Filling the narrow park that surrounds the building, a grand neoclassical structure that all of a sudden had started to feel like the tightest of traps.
So go back up to the picture. This is what it looks like. Scroll down a little more. Right there. This is what it looks like. He looks out his window and sees thousands and thousands and thousands of white police officers, off-duty police officers. Let's make sure we remember that. Off-duty police officers in this tight little space inside this park, roaring, yelling, causing a big commotion. Keep reading, please.
Steitzel, then first deputy mayor of operations, heard officers chanting.
He hears what?
heard officers
He
chanting.
heard people singing, chanting, shouting this.
Dinkins gotta go.
What?
Dinkins gotta go.
These white, drunk, upset, off-duty police officers are shouting what?
Dinkins gotta go.
You know, the mayor is over the NYPD. The mayor of New York City, he's over the NYPD. He controls the NYPD. And the NYPD, these thousands of drunk, upset, white, off-duty cops are saying that the mayor has to go. He has to resign from office. They need to kick him out. He needs to be removed from the seat of mayor of New York City. Keep going.
And the mayor's on crack.
What?
The mayor's on crack.
Show me the mayor again. That's a black man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a black man, right? That's a black man. Go back to the article. What did they say about him?
The mayor's on crack.
They said the mayor's on crack. The mayor is a black man. In the 80s and 90s, who were the people that were suffering the most because of the crack epidemic? Was it white people or was it us? In the chat, let me see if someone can answer that question in the chat. Steve Miller, don't worry, man. Get your win up. Who were suffering the most during the crack epidemic? Was it white people or was it us? Sha'afwan, absolutely correct. It was us. They're saying that the mayor is on crack because he is a black man, and black people, Hispanic people, are crackheads, according to these NYPD officers, according to these white officers. They're calling the mayor, the very first mayor that's black in New York City, a crackhead, saying that he's on crack. Keep reading.
They carried signs bearing racist cartoon images of Mayor David Dinkins.
What?
They carried signs bearing racist cartoon images of Mayor David
Now they
Dinkins.
carried signs of racist cartoon images of Mayor Dinkins. What describe the signs?
With humongous lips and nose and an afro.
They basically pulled out, what do you call those things? There's a word.
Caricature.
Character, yes. Google a quick character, black character, exaggerated black character. This is what they were carrying around, and type Mayor Dinkins. See if you type in Mayor Dinkins. Images. Can we find something that any signs that they did? Let's see. No, they're not going to put him. They gave him humongous lips, right? What else? Don't worry, you forget it. Forget it. Go back to the article. Right? Humongous lips, a huge nose, and an afro, right? Keep going.
Including several calling the city's first black mayor a washroom attendant.
And they reduce this black man who has so many accolades, from graduating from law school, from going to college, I think it was Howard, going to Brooklyn Law School, right? He served in the armed forces. They reduced him to a big lip, big nose, afro having washroom attendant. You know what washroom attendants normally were? When you went into white, well-known establishments like restaurants, and you would go into the bathroom to take a crap or take a piss, there would be a black man there putting soap on your hands, giving you a mint, cleaning the toilet bowl after you just took a crap in it, giving you a paper towel to dry your hands, and they reduced this man to a washroom attendant. They had no respect for Mayor Dinkins. But the sad part is, I could understand slightly. Maybe Mayor Dinkins did something that was atrocious. You know, maybe Mayor Dinkins was ruining the economy for New York City. Maybe Mayor Dinkins was, you know, taking jobs away from NYPD officers and cutting back the budget and reducing, you know, maybe if he was doing something harmful to New York City, I could understand why these monsters would want to portray Mayor Dinkins in such a way, right? But let's find out why. Let's find out one of the main reasons why they were acting like this towards Mayor Dinkins. Keep going.
The officers had a permit to protest, which confined the demonstration to Murray Street, a road perpendicular to City Hall lined with Irish pubs.
What?
Lined with Irish pubs.
You know, the majority of police officers that took over and ran the police force were Irish. That's a fact. You can go Google it. So these off-duty police officers who were drunk, because it said they were drunk, these white off-duty drunk police officers got a permit approved to be in a space where on both sides of the street of where their permit was nothing but what?
Irish pubs.
How did they get drunk? Where did they go to get drunk? Where did they go to get
Irish
drunk?
pubs.
They didn't get drunk at home and travel the subway or took a cab here. No. They came to this protest and knew there would be
Irish pubs.
So they went to go get drunk, plastered, wasted in these
Irish pubs.
Right? Keep going.
They were mad that Dinkins was pushing a bill that would change the composition of the Civilian Complaint Review Board.
What? Civilian what?
The Civilian Complaint Review Board.
Now, when a crime happens, right, and the people protest this crime and they write complaints, these complaints, when there's so many and the complaints are just so, what's the best word to say? What's the best word to use? When these complaints are just so out of the norm, where it's promoting great excess police force, police abuse, cops robbing drug dealers and then selling the drugs themselves. When it's crazy complaints like this, the excessive force, you know what I'm saying? The unaliving of an innocent person, the Civilian Complaint Review Board will get these complaints to review them. To look at all the facts that were presented, the people that were involved, to make a decision on this complaint, right? But he was pushing a bill that would change who sat on the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And they were upset at this. Why?
The oversight body that examined complaints of police misconduct.
They did what?
Examined complaints of police misconduct from half cop, half civilian.
So it was half cops on the Civilian Complaint Board and half civilians on this Civilian Complaint Board. So on this board that is supposed to review the complaints from citizens, you have cops on it and civilians on it. Keep going.
To all civilians.
So what?
To all civilians.
And Mayor Dinkins was pushing this bill to remove the cops from this Civilian Complaint Board, because it says civilian, not police and civilian. Civilians are not police officers, right? They can be, but in this circumstances, they're not. They are not really technically civilians. This is for citizens, civilians, to review the complaints from citizens about the police. There's a conflict of interest when you decide to have police be part of a board that is supposed to review complaints about the police, right? So they were mad that he was trying to change to remove all police officers from this review board, and have just regular people. Keep going.
And make it independent of the New York Police Department.
And what?
And make it independent of the New York Police Department.
And not only did he want to remove police officers from this complaint board, he wanted to remove the complaint board completely and separated from the New York Police Department. So it's not attached or associated with the New York Police Department. It's its own unique entity. Keep going.
The bill was part of a wave of measures proposed by cities across the country in the wake of the shocking caught-on-tape beating of Rodney King in Los Angeles in March 1991.
So because of the beating of Rodney King, now I'm pretty sure we all probably heard that. We just see the anniversary of the Rodney King beating, and we see videos and movies that were based upon this time period. Keep going.
And just months earlier, the April 1992 acquittal of all 4 officers in the case.
And then all those 4 officers that beat that man to the ground. I've seen that video when I was younger. It's just horrendous how that many times they hit him with their sticks. They beat this man. And all 4 officers involved were let go, cleared of any charges against them in criminal court. Keep going.
Dinkins was uptown attending a funeral, which meant that Steisel was the highest ranking person in the administration inside City Hall. Days later, Steisel talked to Phil Caruso, president of the New York City Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, which later changed its name to the Police Benevolent Association, or PBA. Caruso, a powerful figure who was respected by the rank and file, tried to explain the officer's anger.
So, this Caruso character is going to we're going to hear some of his arguments on the justification of why the police were angry. Let me go back. Any more comments? So Michael Love, you're absolutely right. All right, keep going, Bubba Gashar.
You don't treat these guys with respect. You don't treat these guys with respect, Steisel recalled Caruso telling him.
So Steisel, I believe he was a deputy mayor, right? Steisel is recalling that Caruso, that sounds like an Italian name too. Caruso is saying that the mayor does not respect these guys, talking about the police. Keep going.
When you create a civilian complaint review board, which is going to challenge everything they do, it's just going to respond to black whining.
What?
It's just going to respond to black whining.
So the fact that they wanted to remove police from this complaint board, the fact that they wanted to separate this complaint board from the New York City Police Department, their justification is that there's just going to be a bunch of black people whining and crying about police officers. That's not very sensitive, is it? That shows a lack of respect to the citizens that you're supposed to be policing, serving, protecting, providing professionalism and courtesy while on the job. You're reducing them to a bunch of black babies. Now, he didn't say they're just going to respond to a bunch of people whining. He was very specific on the people he was talking about. He said black whining. Now, whining, crying doesn't have a color associated to it. So he was very specific and deliberate on the type of people he was talking about. Black people, people of dark complexion, whining about police brutality and misconduct and excessive force. Keep going.
Steisel remembered Caruso telling him,
scroll up so you get this Volvo image out.
If you don't respect them, you'll never have a safe city again.
What?
If you don't respect them, you'll never have a safe city again.
So Caruso's, to me, that's like a borderline threat. If you don't respect us police officers, you're never going to have a safe city. Why is that? The police officers are supposed to keep and maintain public safety in New York City, in any city. By him saying, if you don't respect us, you're never going to have a safe city because we're never going to do our jobs. You get paid to do your job. Respect does not pay someone to do their job. You having a salary and a budget to pay you is what keeps you doing your job. Now, I can understand you're upset about how you feel you're being treated, right? but no injustice is being done to them. So what? You're being removed from the civilian complaint board. It's not like you're getting fired. So what if the civilian complaint board is being separated and cutting ties and becoming its own entity separate from the New York Police Department? So what? It's not, you're not getting fired. You're not losing pay. Right? Keep going.
The day of the protest, Rudy Giuliani was also outside the building with a microphone. Giuliani, a former U.S. attorney and failed mayoral candidate in 1989, declared the reason the morale of the police department of the city of New York is so low is one reason and one reason alone: David Dinkins.
That sounds like what a sore loser would say.
Right.
You know, imagine being this white guy, well-known white guy coming from good upbringing, running to be mayor and losing to a black guy. It sounds like a sore loser. Keep going.
The crowd roared.
And the what?
The crowd roared.
And as soon as he said that the reason that everything's falling apart is because of this black man, the white crowd cheered him. Keep going.
The mayor doesn't know why the morale of the police department is so low, Giuliani said. He blames it on me. He blames it on you. Bullshit. Giuliani then attacked an anti-corruption commission impaneled by Dinkins, which he said was created, quote, to protect David Dinkins' political ass. More cheers rose from the crowd.
So the white mob, the white drunken mob of off-duty police officers are just eating this up. And when you look at here, you see more white people who just happen to be wearing yarmulkes. Jewish people there. Keep going.
The caption here is Rudy Giuliani, who had run for mayor and lost in 1989, was seen as the chief inciter of the City Hall riot.
Shaking hands with Jewish people. Keep going.
The demonstration began to spiral out of control, amplified by officers drinking at the pubs on Murray Street.
Now, didn't I say that these cops were drunk because they were going to these Irish pubs? And we are reading that the officers were amplified or amped up or riled up because they were drinking at these pubs. The permit that they got to hold this protest, on each side of them was bars. So what were they doing? They were getting drunk and protesting until it just blew out of control. Keep going.
Thousands more had shown up than were expected.
Right. So normally when you apply for a permit for New York City, whether it be a parade, a march, any type of event that's happening in the streets, you have to fill out a New York City permit plan and submit it to the NYPD for approval. For certain things, you have to have it sent up to City Hall for approval. You have to describe the type of event you're going to have and the amount of people that are expected to show. Thousands more than were expected to be there arrived. So now this is officially out of control and cannot be contained in this small allotted area that was set aside for this protest. Keep going.
Deputy Mayor Fritz Alexander called the police on the police.
He what?
Called the police on the police.
Doesn't that sound funny? Right? You got a bunch of white drunk cops causing a ruckus, all being disorderly in conduct, public drunkenness, right? Damaging vehicles, private property, regular property. They're damaging all this stuff. So the police is called on the police. What sense does that make? You think we have an issue with the blue wall of silence now? You really think the police were gonna betray their fellow officers? No. It's hard to accept that there's whistleblowers in the NYPD shedding light on things things that are going wrong inside the department, blowing the whistle on corruption, fighting tooth and nail to bring this information and proof. And you have other police officers that are totally ostracizing them, going completely against these people who are betraying the blue wall of silence. You really think the police officers were going to be against their fellow police officers? They got to go to work together the next day. That's probably someone's partner that they've been in shootouts with and ate Christmas dinner and Thanksgiving dinner at each other's houses. They probably go to the same church on Easter. You really think they're going to apprehend their friend? That's like the riot that happened in Capitol Hill. You really think they just stormed in there, or the people who let them in there? Keep going.
Acting Police Commissioner Ray Kelly dispatched a phalanx of officers to City Hall for crowd control. That was when Steisel started to get scared. I was getting concerned they're going to storm the building, Steisel said.
What?
I was getting concerned they're going to storm the building, Steisel said.
Rightfully so.
Look
at all the riots that they did. Look at the draft. What was it? The draft riot back in 64. Alexa, when was the draft riot in New York City?
I don't have an answer for that.
I think it was 61.
61, something like that. Alexa, when was the New York City draft riot?
63.
The New York City draft riot occurred from July 13th to July 17th, 1863.
Alexa, stop. So all these white people, especially the fire department and the Metropolitan Police and the municipal police, the police force back then, all rioting, causing destruction, right? You really think they weren't going to do the same thing here? Keep going.
You want me to censor some of this language?
Yes, you can.
I was getting concerned they're going to storm the building, Steisel said. I mean, these effing guys are crazy.
And these effing guys are crazy. You got a bunch of white police officers who probably live in Long Island, who hate working in the city, who despise us urbanites, us black and brown folk, getting drunk in the city. You better believe these guys are effing crazy. Keep going.
This was the beginning of an outburst of violence. An outburst of violence.
This was nothing but violence. Keep going.
That for various reasons had been all but scrubbed from New York's historical memory.
Right, because we were never taught these things. This is scrubbed from the history books throughout public education here in New York City. Keep going.
It not only involved Mayor Dinkins, but was a formative experience for two future mayors and the city's likely next mayor, who back then was a 32-year-old transit police officer. It's almost equivalent to what we saw at the Capitol, Eric Adams told me recently.
This is Eric Adams, mayor, who's actually the mayor now, the second black mayor of New York City. He was there at the time. He was a transit police officer, and he's comparing his experience then to the experience of the January 6th riots and said it was almost equivalent, just about the same. You know why? Because in this riot, it was a bunch of white people who were cops. And in that riot, it was predominantly white people. Maybe they were cops too. Keep going.
A closer look back at the City Hall riot, as it deserves to be known, also serves as a reminder of the challenges Adams himself will face when he takes office next year. A police department that, all these decades later, still often seems hell-bent on resisting meaningful reform.
Right? So that's always been the issue with the NYPD. Right? The NYPD going against bills that they feel will hinder them from doing their work effectively, efficiently, and where citizens feel that this will allow more transparency and honesty with how the police do their work. Like with the most recent bill that just got vetoed, intro to Bill 586 or 568, something like that, where police officers are now going to have, the police officers are now having to report all level 1, 2, and 3 stops, engagements with citizens. So, for instance, if I see you jaywalk and I decide to stop you and question you and ask you why you did that, I would have to write a report, get your name, right? If I see someone, let's say if I witness someone selling drugs, of course I would have to write that up, but you would have to think which one is more important to public safety, someone jaywalking or someone getting caught selling narcotics. Either way, they have to spend time writing up a report. So the police feel one way about it, the citizens feel another way about it. The bill just got vetoed, even though the bill was vetoed by the mayor, and then I believe the city council vetoed his veto or appealed his veto and pushed it through. Right? Keep going.
At the time of the riot, Bill de Blasio was a 31-year-old junior aide in the Dinkins administration. 30 years later, current and former aides say the mayor still tells staff that the riot made a huge impression on him as a young person working in politics, a factor that no doubt shaped de Blasio's early pledges to reform the police and showed him what can happen when the police turn on the mayor.
And, if you remember, back during the pandemic and everything, the police did not like Blasio. They did not like him whatsoever. I believe there was a report he was walking and they all had their backs towards him.
I believe that was at the funeral for the officers who were shot. They all turned their backs on him. Yeah.
Right? They all had their backs turned towards him. Well, listen, he was part of the Mayor Dinkins administration during this riot. So he knows the risk you take when you anger your subordinates, the NYPD. Keep going.
Una Clark, then a member of city council, tried to enter the building, but an off-duty officer.
Una Clark is also another black woman. Sorry, not another black woman. Una Clark is a black woman, right? Keep going.
But an off-duty officer blocked her from crossing the street. She later said the white officer turned to another officer next to him and said, "There's an N-word who says she's a council member."
So imagine this white officer turns to this, being a councilwoman is a big deal in New York City. It's prestigious. You had to have a certain amount of achievements and accolades. You couldn't just be some uneducated person off the street. She had to work her way to get into that position. And to have just some white cop reduce your experiences, your obstacles, your trauma, your accomplishments, to you just being a regular old Negro. Oh, this N-word over here says she's a council member. You believe her? How disrespectful and racist that is. Keep going.
A group of officers lined up in front of the doors to City Hall.
What they do?
Lined up in front of the doors to City Hall.
So when they descended on City Hall, they stood in front of the doors, preventing people from coming in and out. Keep going.
At one point, they let a woman attending the protest, who may have been the widow of a fallen officer, inside. Someone yelled that they had arrested her, and the mob of officers outside rushed the building.
So now they heard this rumor that the woman that they did decide to let go in, that she was arrested. So now they just rushed the building. Keep going.
Remembered Bob Liff, a former City Hall reporter at Newsday who was inside the building at the time. In all my years there, with lots and lots of demonstrations, it is the only time I ever remember the cops slamming the doors shut and putting the bars across the doors to keep anyone from getting in, Liff said. It is also the only time I remember feeling any sense of fear inside City Hall.
Now, this man said that he'd never been scared in City Hall before until he saw this white mob, these revelers, drunken protesters, off-duty cops, cause him to have fear for his safety in City Hall. Never would you imagine that it would be cops to bring some sense of insecurity to a place of government like City Hall, right? See if there's any comments. Caruso is Italian. Yeah, I figured that much. Let's see. They said games now. Yep, especially with the defund police movement. He does sound like a sore loser. That's why. Isn't Giuliani still in jail right now, or did he get out?
No,
He's still in jail.
I think he's got lawsuits against him. I don't think he's in jail.
I thought I know they got like a mugshot of him somewhere.
They just booked him and released him, I think.
Yeah, okay. You're right. The police are supposed to earn the respect of the civilians they're policing, right? Let's get back into this article.
Officers climbed atop vehicles. Officers climbed atop vehicles.
When the Eagles win, all these white people went crazy and climbed on top of police vehicles, burned stuff, like burned police vehicles, and they jumping on street lamps, acting like real monkeys. These white people acting like real monkeys, right? For winning a Super Bowl. Now, when someone like George Floyd has a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and we riot and destroy stuff, which we shouldn't do anyway. But when we do it, it doesn't give the same light as winning the Super Bowl. It looks as these protesters are dangerous. They're a bunch of hoodlums, thugs, agitators, criminals, arsonists. They all need to be arrested, thrown in jail, use the pepper spray, beat them senseless. Where's the stun gun? Someone bring the K9 unit. It's all shown in a bad light. But these officers, you never knew that they were acting like monkeys and orangutans in a zoo, jumping on cars and hanging from street poles and standing on top of telephone booths. You would never know that. You want to say something?
Oh, it's funny you say that because in Philly, it's famous. They have to go around and grease all the poles, all the light poles, to stop white people from climbing on them, and when these celebrations happen.
That is absolutely insane that you have to do that. But that's not looked in a bad light. That just looked as us taking our pent-up energy and excitement for our white patriots from winning, But for us, we're looked as dark villains that need to be controlled and put down because we don't know how to act like civilians and we're savages. That's the mindset of these people, right? Keep going. Start from the top again.
Officers climbed atop vehicles parked in front of the building, kicking and pummeling them.
What?
Kicking and pummeling them.
Now, I've seen videos of protests where there's predominantly a lot of black people kicking and pummeling police vehicles, smashing the windshield in because a black man was unalived, because a black woman was unalived, because a black man was choked out in Staten Island, right? And those are crimes. And then I've seen, like I said, people winning the Super Bowl. Police windshields get pushed in, kicked in, spray painted on, and police are kind of mad, but they're also happy that their city won the Super Bowl. Right? Keep going.
Then the sea of officers repelled from the doors of City Hall.
What?
Repelled from the doors of City Hall.
Now, when I think of that, when I was first reading this article for the first time, all I thought was SWAT coming down from the building. You know how they rappel off the rope, and then coming down from the roof. That's the first thing that came to my mind. Like they were just on some SWAT Batman type stuff and rappelling off the building.
That's repel with an A.
I know.
Oh,
but when I first read it, that's how my mind took it. So I had to pause, read it again, and understand that it's not coming down from a rope from the roof or a helicopter. They were just leaving the building and going a different direction. Keep reading.
Turned and headed for the Brooklyn Bridge, just a few hundred feet away from the building's gates.
So they left City Hall and then decided to descend and storm on Brooklyn Bridge. Keep going.
They stormed over it. At least one on-duty officer opened up the barricades for the protesters.
What?
At least one on-duty officer opened up the barricades for the protesters.
At the riot at Capitol Hill, what?
At least one on-duty officer opened up the barricades for the protesters.
At the riot in 1992 in City Hall, what?
At least one on-duty officer opened up the barricades for the protesters.
Stop playing. I'm pretty sure it's already been proven that officers let those rioters in during the riot in Capitol Hill. Here we got proof that at least one, they're saying at least one, at the minimum one, but at the extreme, many of them were just, hey, yo, this way. And those were on-duty police officers. Remember how I said you're gonna arrest the guy who comes over and brings your kids Christmas presents every Christmas?
Right.
You're gonna arrest your partner? You got McGillicuddy and you got Callahan. You think they're gonna go against each other? They were raised in the same school. They both went to St. Francis Academy and played on the football team. You think they're gonna arrest each other? No, it's like, hey yo, McGillicuddy, over here. I got you. They're gonna open the door and let him in. Keep going.
New York Times reporter Alan Finder followed the rioters onto the bridge and was kicked in the stomach. John Haygood, a black cameraman for CBS, was called the N-word by people in the crowd.
By who?
By people in the crowd.
And the crowd was filled of white rioters who were drunk, off-duty police. Keep going.
City Council member Mary Pinkett, in a car on the Brooklyn Bridge, got caught in the traffic.
I believe she's also a black woman too, Mary Pickett.
Sounds like it.
Right? Alexa, was city councilwoman Mary Pickett African American?
The question does not provide enough information to answer it.
There she goes. Yep, she's a black woman from Fort Greene, New York. Wait, no, go back. City's first black councilwoman represented Fort Greene. Type in Mary Pickett, New York City councilwoman. Just want to make sure it's correct. Yeah, she's a black woman. She's a black woman, right? So another black woman is in a car with more black people who just happen to be elderly. Keep going.
Slacky. She later recalled off-duty officers shook and rocked her car in order to frighten her and the elderly black passengers inside.
You know why? Because they were already just targeting black people, just like during the draft riots in 1861. Keep going.
About a dozen mounted officers set on their horses and didn't act to quell the riot.
You know why? You know why? Because McLeary is not going to arrest his friend Sullivan. This is not going to happen. McLeary and McSullivan went to the rival school against McGillicuddy and Callahan, but they're all friends and they went to the same church. They just sat there and did nothing, right? The police officer's job is to protect and serve. They see a situation getting out of hand. People forget the fact that there were police officers that were off duty. These people are drunk in public, which is a crime. These people are causing a great disturbance on the New York City bridge, which is a crime. These people are impeding the flow of traffic. These people are displaying disorderly conduct, which is a crime. And these police officers are doing nothing. All right, keep going.
When Eric Adams arrived downtown, there was a full-blown riot going on.
A full-blown riot. You know what that means? That means things are being thrown, vehicles are getting damaged, people are fighting, pushing, shoving. It's a riot. It's mayhem. Think of the Batman. Think of the last Batman, Dark Knight Returns. I think that's what it's called. And they're fighting. The police are fighting Bane at the end. That's a riot. Think of that. That's what was happening there. Keep going.
Quote, when people are riled up to that level, you leave the state of being rational to the irrational behavior of a mob-like atmosphere, he told me.
When people are riled up to that level, you leave the state of being rational to the irrational behavior of a mob-like atmosphere. That's pretty heavy. Imagine the things he saw that were happening, that we would need to speak to him one-on-one to talk to him about. Please continue.
Some of the city's newspaper columnists, including Jimmy Breslin, the poet laureate of the city's blue-collar working class, were repulsed. According to a column he wrote the next day, Breslin saw an officer in a PBA shirt saying to a female television reporter, "Here, let me grab your ass." He saw one officer yelling across the beer can held to his mouth, "How did you like the N-words beating you up in Crown Heights?"
Now, this is in reference to the Crown Heights riot that apparently Al Sharpton started. We'll get to that riot too one day. Keep going.
Another said, "Now you got an N-word right inside City Hall. How do you like that? An N-word mayor."
Right? Look how disrespectful they are to their boss. Look at the racism and discrimination that these white police officers are portraying, not just to the people that are there, but for us to read that they're making these statements. This is readily accessible to anyone in the world. If you live in New York City, you can just Google this and find this information. But the fact that we don't know this information, the fact that the majority of us are learning it for the first time right here, right now, it just cements the idea that we've had about the police, especially here in New York City. It cements the idea that we had about them this whole entire time, right? Continue, please.
They had beer and they wore guns and they all thought they had beer.
So they had beer, so they were public intoxication, clearly drinking in public. What else?
And they wore guns.
They did what?
They wore guns.
So it's okay for police officers in 1992. It was okay for police officers to be publicly intoxicated and have their gun on them. You know what happens when drunk people have guns? Bad things can happen. As we can see, bad things were already happening. Fortunately, it hasn't been reported that I have been able to find that someone fired a gun. Keep going.
And they all thought it was great to be young and drunk and ignorant. Breslin wrote, they were screaming that the mayor, this black mayor, wants a civilian review board.
And what is wrong with that? Why not have? Why can't there be a civilian review board with just civilians, no cops involved? Why can't that board review the complaints that are submitted to it about police misconduct? Right? What's wrong about that? It's not hurting anyone. Maybe it may hold cops more accountable to their actions when they're so accustomed to being allowed to act any way they want. Keep going.
And they put it right out in the sun yesterday in front of City Hall. We have a police force that is openly racist.
What?
We have a police force that is openly racist. And there's
Bresson wrote, this reporter said, we have a police force that is openly racist. Because from the statements that people made, the police were saying racist things to black people, about black people, white police officers. Keep going.
And there is a question as to what good they possibly can be in a city that will be famous forever as existing grandly with every other color there is between here and Mars.
Yeah, so how could a police force that is overwhelmingly in this time period, white, Irish, Italian, how can this racist police force ever be effective at their job to protect and serve, to provide professionalism and courtesy to the citizens of this state, of this city, if they're racist, openly racist? Now, if they're saying these things, imagine what they are doing to the people in the areas that they are patrolling. Keep going.
We have been saying for years that the police department is comprised of racist Long Islanders who come into the city by day and leave at night with their arrogant attitudes and believing they are above the law, Adams told newspaper reporters right after the riot.
So Mayor Eric Adams, who's the second black mayor of New York City, who is the current mayor right now, back in 1992, he says that we've been telling people that the police department is filled with white, racist men, people, many of them from Long Island, who are racist, that only come into the city to work, and they are glad to leave this dump of a city to go back home. And they feel that they are better than everyone else because they don't live in the slums, they don't live in the ghettos, they don't live in the projects, they don't live in areas where they have to deal with black people and Hispanic people. They get to go home to their white neighborhoods where the snow is always white, where the grass is always green, where their white picket fence is always white and never gets dirty. But they have to leave that dream that they work for to come into this disgusting, rundown city where it's just a bunch of animals. This is their mentality. Keep going.
Well, finally, the entire city was able to see what we've been talking about. Adams also told Newsday that the riot was right out of the 1950s, a drunk, racist lynch mob storming City Hall and coming in here to get themselves an N-word.
Because that was the atmosphere that they created. Because back in the 20s, they did the same thing. In the 30s, they did the same thing. In the 50s, they did the same thing. This is the attitude white people had and portrayed since slavery. All the way up to right now, a black man is saying this is how it felt. You had a drunk white mob who were police officers making openly racist statements to councilwomen, to people, causing destruction and mayhem. And it felt like they were trying to lynch a black person. Keep going.
He was just angry at the time, Adams told me nearly 30 years later. I was just angry because I knew. Imagine the symbol of this. Here you had the first black mayor, the chief executive of the city, and they, the rioters, basically said, we don't care who you are if you're black.
We don't care who you are if you're black. You're not going to get any respect from these police officers because you are black. Keep going.
Adams remembers he chose those words carefully. History has so many examples of storming places, houses of worship, places, and going in and grabbing a black person, a man in particular, and hanging, beating, he said. The City Hall riot should be part of the historical narrative of these types of drunken lynch mobs, Adams said. He said police participation in the riot wasn't counterintuitive because in the American history of lynch mobs, many of them were being led in the South by sheriffs, marshals, and other lawmakers.
It was basically the same exact thing. Let's see. Before we continue, let's check out the comments. Shalom Apataza. Yeah, the cops definitely stand for themselves. Keep going.
Dinkins' effort to reform the Civilian Complaint Review Board was not the only nominal catalyst for the riot. Fear of crime gripped the city that summer, hardening and embittering the New Yorkers who'd congratulated themselves on electing their first black mayor just 3 years earlier. Dinkins had brought crime rates down from a record of 2,262 homicides in 1990 to 2,020 in 1992.
So they're saying that crime was a fear, but on the Mayor Dinkins, crime apparently went down 238 for the year. Keep going.
But they were still elevated. Last year, for comparison, there were 468 murders in New York. Racial tensions also simmered. In August 1991, a riot broke out between the black and Jewish residents of Crown Heights.
That's the riot that apparently Al Sharpton may allegedly instigated. And I'm saying allegedly because I want to wait to hold this information for our next class, right? Keep going.
A young boy and a young Jewish man were killed, stores were destroyed, and many were injured. It took police days to restore order. In early July 1992, in Washington Heights in Upper Manhattan, white officer Michael O'Keefe shot and killed young bodega clerk Jose Kiko Garcia. an undocumented immigrant from the Dominican Republic. Neighbors said that prior to the shooting, they witnessed O'Keefe beat Garcia with his police radio.
So it's just an intense environment that's brewing to this event. Keep going.
Anti-police rage boiled over into 3 nights of protests that turned into riots uptown. Cars were burned, stores looted. People in the neighborhood were particularly angry that O'Keefe was a member of a plainclothes unit from the long-troubled 34th Precinct, which was rumored to be full of dirty cops who shook down drug dealers for money and was under investigation by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York.
So you gotta take into consideration anyone can make a complaint. But when you're getting complaints that are saying the same thing, like I know a drug dealer is not going to make a complaint to the NYPD that a NYPD officer knows he's a drug dealer, stole his drugs, and then sold them back to someone else. No drug dealer is going to do that. That's just not how it goes in that particular atmosphere, in that world. So this means that regular citizens were watching police officers rob drug dealers. Regular citizens were watching police officers use excessive force, beat people, and they were making these complaints. And the complaint was so much and so much in abundance that people were kind of in agreement that, scroll back up, people were in agreement that the 34th precinct was full of dirty cops. Keep going.
In an attempt to diffuse tensions, Mayor Dinkins invited Garcia's family to Gracie Mansion. Cops, who'd been working without a contract for 2 years, were already frustrated with Dinkins despite the fact he'd passed legislation adding thousands of new officers to the force and had shielded the department from budget cuts.
So before I want you to read that again, but first, the cops didn't like that he invited the unalived Dominican man's family to Gracie's mansion. They did not like that. But Dinkins didn't do anything wrong to the NYPD, right? It says that even though the cops were working without a contract for 2 years, right? Despite the fact that he passed legislation adding thousands of new officers to the force, so even though the NYPD were working without a contract, without a signed contract, Dinkins added police officers to the force. He wasn't letting go or firing anyone. He had protected the NYPD from budget cuts. He made sure that the NYPD still had the budget that they need to do their job with competence, right? But they were still upset. They weren't happy with Mayor Dinkins. Keep going.
The police called Garcia, who had a single drug conviction, a drug dealer in the pages of the city's tabloids, outraged at the sympathy Dinkins showed to the Garcia family.
They villainized him. A man was just unalived, right? They always do that. The media and the police will always do that to Black and Hispanic people. You could have been a choir boy and never jaywalked or stole a Snickers bar from a store, and they will find some way to vilify you in the media, right? You could have had a bad past. You could have been in the gang, went to prison, sold drugs before and got in trouble and changed your life around. And now you're a contributing member of society. Let you get into an altercation with the NYPD, whether you are unalived or not. The media and the NYPD are going to bring up every single dollar you stole from your grandmother's purse. Every single time you jaywalk, they will bring up everything possible to paint that individual in the most villainous way possible in the media.
Right.
Right? Keep going.
Even though O'Keefe was celebrated by the police at City Hall that day, he is surprisingly critical of the riot, though he insists it should be called a demonstration. Quote, when the thing broke up, it went bad, O'Keefe told me. They basically took the bridge, which was hysterical because we were so critical of Al Sharpton and all these people who took the bridge whenever they had a stubbed toe.
Right, so he found it humorous that they took over the Brooklyn Bridge because other protests and riots had done the same thing. And then he's comparing what Al Sharpton has done and is minimizing the reasons why Al Sharpton and the people who followed him stormed these bridges to stubbing a toe against the leg of a bed. Like those reasons why they stormed the bridge, like forget that black man being unalived or this child being unalived by the police. Those are all small reasons, like hitting your funny bone. We have a real reason why we stormed the bridge, right? He's minimizing all the great contributing factors that led protesters to do the things that they did. So that way, what the police officers did would be looked upon as being greater than anything else. Let me go back to the comments real quick. Most High in Christ. Right. Racism. That's what it is. Let's keep going.
On September 3rd, a grand jury impaneled by then Manhattan District Attorney Robert Morgenthau cleared O'Keefe of Garcia's killing.
So now he was cleared of any wrongdoing for the unaliving of Jose Kiki Garcia. Keep going.
A week later, Morgenthau issued a 45-page report about the incident, citing inconsistencies between witness testimony and physical evidence. The version of events which they have offered to investigators is not only not corroborated by the physical evidence in this case, it is actually contradicted by that evidence, Morgenthau wrote. The newly exonerated O'Keefe showed up the day of the protest at City Hall and was hailed by the crowd as a hero.
So he was a hero for beating a store worker with his radio and unaliving him. He was a hero. Keep going.
In the immediate aftermath of the riot, there was outrage from both politicians and observers in the media. Breslin and other pundits speculated that the cops had dealt Dinkins a winning hand that would ensure his re-election the next year, and that Giuliani had badly damaged his political career by inciting a riot. Quote, they used racist language, carried racist signs, and called the mayor an N-word.
Because it's true. They called the first black mayor of New York City the N-word. Keep going.
Times columnist Anna Quinlan wrote, nearly a third of New York City's police officers live on Long Island, and some of them like to congratulate themselves on getting out of the hellhole they are sworn to protect. A few days later, Dinkins, a solemn, quiet, and composed person who took pains to not lose his cool in public, let his composure slip. Quote, if some officers in full view of a camera and public and their superiors or officers would use racial slurs, yelling N-words, and some of the signs they were carrying, I fear how they would behave when they are out in the streets, Dinkins said, visibly angry.
And that is a very valid concern because that is the truth. All the stories that you can walk down the block and talk to everyone you see, and they will probably have a negative interaction story with the NYPD. Whether it was racism, discrimination, police brutality, use of excessive force, we can see the plethora of evidence and reports during the whole stop and frisk era. We can see that, right? We can see how police officers are patrolling your projects, but not patrolling Wall Street. We can see that. Keep going.
A group of black officers that included Adams demanded an inquiry. Speaker Peter Vallone, who had been disinclined to support Dinkins' CCRB legislation before the riot, was incensed by the behavior on display during the riot. Multiple council members' cars were badly damaged. Newsday reported Brooklyn seeing City Councilman Herb Berman watch helplessly as the rioters tore a headlight from his Audi parked outside.
They tore a headlight. No, the headlights are like inside the car, like in the front of the front bumper, like in there. It's not like it's sticking out. Like, unless he had one of those cars where the headlights rotate up and rotate in, then I can understand. Or you had some old-fashioned car where the headlight sticks out and is attached to it. But you gotta put some work in to rip a headlight out of a car. Keep going.
Vallone ended up pushing through a compromise bill to change the composition of the CCRB. But as the days passed, the atmosphere changed. Caruso, the PBA president, was defiant. Giuliani, far from fearing the riot's impact on his political future, was ecstatically happy about his participation in it. One of the reasons those police officers might have lost control is that we have a mayor who invites riots, Giuliani told reporters a few days later.
A mayor that invites riots? Those are some bold words, Giuliani. Bold words. Keep going.
He said he felt empathy for the police officers, not the people frightened by them. I had four uncles.
This is the man that eventually ended up being mayor, right? Mayor Giuliani. This is the man that ended up being mayor. That he said, like, what, a mayor is every 4 years, right? He said, it was Ed Koch and then Mayor Giuliani. Yeah. So 8 years later, he still got the same mentality. Like, I don't care about none of you New Yorkers who are black, brown, complain a lot.
No, it was him in the next election.
No, it was Ed Koch after.
Ed Koch was before that.
That's what I mean. So after Dinkins, it was Ed Koch.
No.
No? Okay, we gotta Google this. Time out. Sidebar. List of mayors, right? New York City mayors. Sidebar, y'all.
Damn it.
Wait, you went too far. You are right. You are right. So after Dinkins was mayor, Ed Koch was the mayor before Dinkins. And then after Dinkins was mayor, he lost to Giuliani. Right? So 4 years later, or 2 years later,
because this was 3 years into his term. Remember? So it was right after this.
Yes. So 1 year later, sorry, because he was elected in 89. This is in 92. That's 3 years later. So in 93, he lost to Giuliani. Giuliani did not like you regular New Yorkers, you black New Yorkers, you Hispanic New Yorkers. He only cared about upstanding white New Yorkers, especially the police. Keep going.
I had four uncles who were cops, he said. So maybe I was more emotional than I usually am. Giuliani said the real issue was not.
Isn't this also the same man that said that the 9/11 happened during Barack Obama presidency? I believe Giuliani is the same man that blames Barack Obama for 9/11 when it was George Bush who was president during 9/11.
I know he was mayor during 9/11. Giuliani,
right? Yeah. He was also the mayor, and then Bush was mayor too.
Bush was, he was.
He was Sorry, George Bush was the president.
Yeah.
Mayor Giuliani was the mayor during 9/11. Hilarious. Okay.
Giuliani said the real issue was not racism among the rioting officers, but whether the relatively minor occurrence of racial epithets, if they occurred at all, has been made the focus of this rally for political purposes.
So he's diminishing the credibility of what these white officers were doing. Yeah, I doubt that these fine, upstanding, proud white Americans who serve and protect this city would say something like that. I doubt it. Keep going.
Caruso said the officers' behavior was understandable given the summer's political battles over policing.
So being drunk in public was understanding. Destroying property while drunk was understanding. Being off-duty police officers wearing guns, having and carrying guns, it was understanding for them to act this way. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. You have to be white or someone who loves their slave master in order to say something like this and get away with it. That's ridiculous. Keep going.
Without apologizing for the protest, Mr. Caruso said the raucous behavior of about 4,000 officers among the 10,000 protesters the previous day was a human reaction, and that police feel like pawns in a very complex game of political chess, the New York Times reported. Sometimes, in order to convey a message clearly and graphically, especially on the part of police officers, you have to see it, feel the intensity, Caruso argued. He said the officers were humans, not robots. Caruso even blamed City Councilman Guillermo Linares, a Dominican American who represented the Washington Heights neighborhood and was sharply critical of the police in the wake of the Garcia killing. You are responsible for what happened yesterday, and so is the mayor, Caruso told Linares during a council hearing a day after the riot.
Listen, you blame everyone else that actually was not responsible, because they could have just protested peacefully, right? Peaceful protest. They could have just been a peaceful protest. When the protest time was done, just go home. No, they decided to get drunk, rowdy, cause problems, destroy property, fight, ridicule people, assault, verbally attack people, use racial epithets. They could have just been a peaceful protest. So you're gonna blame their actions on everyone else except for them. All right, keep going. It's crazy.
Somehow, the major papers in New York began to accept some of the Giuliani and Caruso's criticisms.
Of course. But again, the media and the NYPD are always going to vilify the black man. Is always going to vilify the Hispanic man. Is always going to turn the narrative to focus on the negative factors of the article, of the coverage that they're presenting. Keep going.
It probably didn't help that footage from the City Hall riot was limited. Footage from at least one television news report still exists, which aired on NY1, a local news station then in its infancy. Most of the coverage was filtered through the print and radio reporters who covered City Hall.
You're not even given access to the videos or images that actually happened during that day. You're just relying on what's being told to you on the radio and what's being written for you to read. And guess who's controlling that narrative? The same people who are siding with Giuliani and Caruso. Keep going.
A short piece by Washington Post columnist Radley Balco about the riot, written in the wake of Trump's election in 2016, remains one of the few major media accounts of the event beyond the contemporaneous reporting. Some media assigned blame for the riot, the police reaction, the era of bad feelings not just to police, but in the weeks after the riot, increasingly also to Dinkins. By calling out racist behavior, Dinkins was playing the race card. A New York Times editorial from late September apportioned some blame for the racial tension to Dinkins for showing sympathy to Kiko Garcia's family. In doing so, Dinkins trampled on the understandable sensitivities of the police, and indeed, he has not yet shown them adequate concern, the editorial said.
Sounds like a bunch of whining babies.
Right.
Keep going.
Another Times editorial from the first week of October applauded Dinkins, who had by then stopped criticizing police for racist language, as polls showed voters blaming both the mayor and Giuliani for playing the race card. Mayor David Dinkins' more conciliatory approach to the police department is most welcome, the editorial said. New York City needs a break from the tensions generated by the bitter police demonstration 3 weeks ago, and that means lowering the voices on all sides. It was Dinkins who needed to apologize if he wanted to stay mayor, wrote Newsday columnist Dennis Duggan.
Imagine that. The black mayor needs to apologize for what these white, drunk, racist police officers did. Crazy. Keep going.
He might start with an apology to the cops who he dissed, as they say on the streets, by who he dissed, as they say on the streets.
So again, they're reducing this black man to nothing. As Mayor Dinkins would say on the streets, he dissed them. So now he gotta apologize for the diss. That's crazy. If you can't understand, if you're not capable of reading between the lines as we read this, you are still brainwashed to love your slave master. But don't worry. Good news is, one day you'll keep watching these classes, keep watching the ISUBK, keep watching America on Fire, keep watching Let a Hebrew Speak, keep watching Round Table of Truth, keep watching One West Radio, keep watching Boot Up and Shut Up, keep watching all these things like Cross the Line Radio, and you will start to use, Dove soap you'll start to use Mama Scent soap, black soap, to clean all that dirt of the washing that your brain has gone through, and you can start having a cleaner brain and a more sensible way of thinking to see all the racism that these articles are filled with and how they portray the racism that the people during this time had. Because from 1992 to 2024, the majority ruling class, or the majority ruling body of the NYPD, is still white people. 92, 2002, 2012, 2024, what's that, 30 years, right? 30 years later, yeah, there are black people on the police force. Their bosses are white people who were there. Yeah, there are Dominicans and Puerto Ricans and Ecuadorians and other Spanish people on the police force, but their bosses are the same people who were there during this riot. How do I know? Because Mayor Adams is still here. He was a police officer during this time who is now the mayor of New York City. Don't worry, you'll get there one day. All right, keep going.
By taking the mother of the dead drug dealer into Gracie Mansion, and then by paying for the dead drug dealer's funeral with city tax money, he wrote.
See, they don't even care that there's no proof that he was selling drugs at that time. He was just a supermarket worker, a deli worker that got beat there. They're going to attach whatever he did prior to that, prior to his being unalived by Officer Keith, something like that, and they're gonna label him a dead drug dealer when he was just working. Keep going.
In a September 18th op-ed, A.M. Rosenthal, a former executive editor of the Times who had become a columnist, described the slain Garcia as part of the contemptuously open drug operation that dominates life in Washington Heights day and night.
Drugs do run rampant in Washington Heights. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was young at one point, and I know about Washington Heights. I'm pretty sure those who live in New York City, you hear the stories of Jay-Z. Used to get his cocaine from Papi up in the Heights and sit across at the McDonald's across the street. Listen, it was known for that kind of activity, right? But that's just a small part of what happens in Washington Heights. Keep going.
He used drugs heavily, was a convicted drug peddler, a probation violator, a fugitive. The mayor properly protested the use of the N-word, New York Post columnist Ray Kerrison wrote, but he is silent when his friend Charles Rangel calls Ross Perot a white cracker. Dinkins...
Because a white cracker is not offensive at all. The term cracker comes from the slave master or the overseer cracking the whip against the flesh of black and native slaves. And it makes that cracking sound. So they started calling white people crackers, which is still a compliment to white people, showing their apparent superiority over the slaves that they were ruling over, because they would crack that whip and get you to do what they want you to do. That's no way the same thing as a white cracker calling a black person the N-word because it was used to dehumanize them. Keep going.
Dinkins combed the press for the most racially inflammatory item he could find and made sure it got maximum attention. Another Post columnist, Scott McConnell, wrote,
There's no truth to that. He's just writing that because he's trying to add fuel to the fire. Keep going.
Chiding Dinkins for drawing attention to the racial slurs officers used at the protest.
Because that was something that was stated by multiple people at that time. You have several people stating that these white officers used the N-word to describe them or calling them. You have a councilwoman. You're not going to believe a councilwoman who's saying they called me the N-word. Keep going.
It's hard to escape the conclusion that the mayor is doing all he can to defeat and humiliate the NYPD, and with it, the millions of New Yorkers who need and support the cops.
That is such deceitful wordplay. Because if Dinkins was trying to destroy the NYPD, he would have made budget cuts to the NYPD. But he didn't. He protected the NYPD for budget cuts. If he wanted to destroy the police department, he would have not allowed the amount of officers to join the force each year, right? This is total horse crap. You know what I'm saying? Like they're picking their words carefully to tailor an image to push the agenda that Mayor Dinkins is no good for the city. Keep going.
His success, thank goodness, isn't assured, for how could such a victory be anything but an utter catastrophe for the city? Although Dinkins framed the protests almost exclusively in racial terms, and despite the fact some racial slurs were used by protesters at the demonstration and a small number held racially provocative signs, New York Times journalist Catherine Manigault reported on September 27th, race did not appear to form a central theme of their complaints, which focused on mayoral policies they felt undercut the police.
Because the police did not want something like a civilian complaint board, review board, to not include them. They needed to be part of that to fight back against any complaints of misconduct. Right? Keep going.
But to many black New Yorkers, race was exactly what the rally was about.
Because that's how we felt. We are tired of the discrimination, the abuse of force, excessive force that we have had to endure for decades from the NYPD, from the New York Police Department. You hear stories about it all the time, right? And even though the police force, the demographics of it have improved to include more people of color, you still hear of the people of color who are police officers conducting themselves in the same manner as their white counterparts would and have been. I'm not saying that the police department is completely spoiled or dysfunctional or bad. What I'm saying is that the people, the regular citizens who are black, Hispanic, Native American people, let's just put any people of color, right, are constantly saying that there's police misconduct, are constantly saying of police discrimination, racism, use of excessive force. There has to be some validity to that if it's being complained about and reported for decades. Keep going.
This rally wasn't about the CCRB or Washington Heights, a high-ranking black officer told Newsday shortly after the riot. It's about race.
This is coming from a high-ranking black police officer, that this entire protest was about race. Keep going.
It's about white cops who don't live in our city.
Which is exactly what is the issue. You have cops who are not from the neighborhood patrolling the neighborhood. You have cops that cannot relate to the daily struggles of the people living in these neighborhoods, policing these neighborhoods. You have cops who don't have any sympathy or any empathy, don't know the history of what happens here in this neighborhood, patrolling this neighborhood. That's not an effective way to provide public safety. If you're putting foreigners into a foreign land to them to govern and control these people, they have nothing alike. They have nothing in common. Keep going.
It's about white cops who don't want any part of a black mayor and will never accept a black mayor. That's what this is really about.
Facts.
Adams had known for years how some of his fellow officers felt about Dinkins. In January 1990, right after Dinkins was inaugurated, Adams put a photo of Dinkins on the front page of the Daily News on his desk at the Transit Police Bureau's data processing unit. Because it was a proud moment, he told me. And the next day I came in, someone vandalized it and wrote washroom attendant on the photograph.
This is what the current mayor states happened to him back in 1990. That looking at a newspaper magazine, he sees the first black man to be mayor, leaves it in his place of work, a police department. And the next day is vandalized and reducing this black man who won the right to be New York City's mayor, equating him to being a washroom attendant. Such a low position, right? Keep going.
The riot spawned two inquiries, nominally aimed at holding officers who participated accountable. One was led by Manhattan DA Morgenthau and another by Ray Kelly.
Now, as we get into this, there were thousands of police officers at this riot. Drunk, wearing guns, causing destruction. Let's see how many got away.
Some black police officers, including Adams, wanted a special prosecutor to be appointed, arguing that the DA's investigation would be tainted by police influence. Dinkins, ever conciliatory, said he didn't see a need for a special prosecutor.
Oh, was he wrong? Keep going.
Less than 14 days after the riot, Acting Police Commissioner Kelly issued a 13-page interim report on the City Hall riot that didn't mention Giuliani's participation at all.
A what?
A 13-page interim report on the City Hall riot that didn't mention Giuliani's participation at all.
So a big agitator to this riot, Rudy Giuliani, whatever he did wasn't even mentioned in this report. Keep going.
Somehow, police only identified 87 of the estimated 10,000 officers and their supporters who participated.
Get the out of here. You mean out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of police officers there who were drunk, rowdy, causing mayhem, destroying property, you mean only 87 officers were identified? Were you that drunk that you can't remember? Or was there people not willing to divulge the information on the people that were there? I don't know about you, but it sounds more likely, more probable that that McCallahan did not want to say that McGillicuddy was there jumping on cars, screaming with a Guinness in his hand. I believe that more than you were so drunk you can't remember who you came with. I don't believe that. Keep going.
Just 42 faced disciplinary charges.
What?
Just 42 faced disciplinary charges.
So out of the 87 people who were identified, out of the 10,000 people there, only 42 received disciplinary charges? Crazy. Keep going.
And only 2 officers were suspended.
What?
And only 2 officers were suspended.
Insane. That is so insane, but it is highly believable. Because how many How many instances have police officers gotten away with unaliving a black man, a Hispanic man? No police misconduct. Gone away. Keep going.
38-year-old Michael Abidabile, who was on duty and charged with opening the barricades to protesters and uttering racial slurs, and off-duty officer Thomas P. Lowful, 27, who had blocked traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge. Another 26 off-duty cops identified as blocking bridge traffic faced disciplinary proceedings.
And that's it. That's it. Keep going.
Among the 42 officers facing discipline were 13 on-duty officers assigned to control the crowd and a helicopter pilot who blared his chopper's horn in support of the protesters.
You mean there was a helicopter there? That's what I'm saying. When I first read they were repelled from City Hall, I'm thinking they came down like SWAT. You know, to think there was a helicopter just vroom, blasting its horn. He got in trouble too. Keep going. So he didn't identify all the people that were there? That's crazy.
Bird's eye view.
That is what you said?
He had a bird's eye view.
Yes, yo, that is crazy. That's insane. Oh, man. Keep going.
And while Kelly condemned the use of racial slurs by officers, by the time the report came out, his stance had softened considerably.
He sympathized with them. He's like, yeah, I said the N-word a few times too. I can't blame them. They were probably just emotional. Keep going.
Kelly announced a new departmental policy that officers who use racial slurs, a new departmental policy.
Yeah, he announced, the commissioner announced a new departmental policy. What's this policy?
Officers who use racial slurs,
That any officer who uses a racial slur like the N-word,
absent extreme emotional distress,
who's not going through extreme emotional distress, and we're going to decide that. We're going to decide what's extreme emotional distress. Keep going.
would be fired.
Yeah. We're going to get away with saying whatever the hell we want because we were emotionally distressed. Keep going.
The media played along. The New York Times editorial board praised the report.
Great. They're going to work hand in hand to paint the greatest picture for them and the worst picture for us. Keep going.
The report is no whitewash, the board said. Mr. Kelly deserves credit for the promptness of his account and its reassuring tone of censure.
The report was no whitewash. It was clearly completely whitewashed. Keep going.
And even the mild report drew criticism from supporters of the police. Giuliani, ever ready to press his advantage, called it an attempt to make the police scapegoats for political gain.
Giuliani was trying to say that this whole report that the people were asking for was just to try to use the police as a scapegoat. Keep going.
The City Hall riot began to fade into history.
And it did. Because the majority of us didn't learn about this, know about this until now. Keep going.
By the next year, as Giuliani prepared to challenge Dinkins for the office of mayor, an internal strategy report prepared for his campaign devoted more than 50 pages to the City Hall riot under the heading racist. When dealing with direct questions about the police rally, Giuliani should acknowledge and criticize the underlying racial nature of the protest, the report read. But the only riots anyone seemed to be able to remember were the ones that Dinkins had allegedly mishandled, the ones where black people were doing the rioting. On the campaign trail, Giuliani hammered Dinkins over the Crown Heights riot.
This is right here. We're going to end it right here. No justice, no police. Take a good look at this image. That's them blocking traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge. No justice for what? What justice needed to be had? Like what crime happened to the NYPD that they need to make a sign that says no justice, no police? This sounds like the biggest group of babies I've ever seen. I'm gonna call the 1992 NYPD city riots the baby Looney Tunes riots, because there's a bunch of babies whining about nothing. A bunch of white police officers whining about nothing, whining about being accountable for their actions. Listen, I'll tell you what. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans do not need justice, and we do not need the police. What we need is the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge to teach Black, Hispanic, and Native American people to obey God. We don't need the police. We don't need America's justice. We don't need it. All we need is to obey these laws, statutes, and commandments of God, and God will give us the justice that we deserve. And with that, I'm Priest Shargapon. Can you go back to StreamYard? You can stop sharing. Actually, go to Gmail real quick. I just said he sent something. Can you refresh that page, Bubba Show? One more time. All right, I don't see the email you sent. Salakia. But I'm Priest Officer Ashar Gapan of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge under Commanding General Yohana. We're here in Harlem. We started in Harlem, right here at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. And we're going to continue to teach this truth and bring you this historical information that has been hidden from you, that we were never taught about, but we're going to learn it here in the ISUPK. Shalom.